There's a certain kind of wisdom that only comes with time, the kind you earn through life's lessons, not lectures. And as we get older, one of the best forms of self-respect is knowing what not to share, because privacy isn't about hiding. It's about protecting your peace. So let's talk about 5 things every older woman should always keep private. Your personal finances are one of the most important areas of your life to keep private. Not because you're ashamed of them, but because money has a way of changing how people see you. It can shift relationships, alter expectations, and even attract the wrong kind of attention. When people know too much about what you make, what you own, or what you spend, they start building a story about you that often has nothing to do with reality. Privacy around your finances isn't secrecy, it's self-preservation. It's understanding that your financial life is personal, complex, and no one else's business. People love to measure worth in numbers: salary, savings, the car you drive, the house you live in, but real worth has nothing to do with that. When you keep your financial situation private, you protect yourself from unnecessary judgment and comparison. You stop giving others a yardstick to measure your life by. Maybe you've worked hard, sacrificed, saved, and finally reached a comfortable place. Or maybe you're rebuilding, figuring things out, and making quiet progress. In both cases, the less people know, the freer you are to make decisions that are right for you without the pressure of what others think. The truth is, money conversations can bring out strange behaviors in people. Friends may suddenly see you as their safety net. Family members might develop a sense of entitlement. Acquaintances can turn competitive. It doesn't mean they're bad people, it just means money stirs emotions, and not everyone handles it well. When you talk too openly about your finances, you invite opinions you didn't ask for and expectations you never agreed to meet. And sometimes that noise gets in your head and starts influencing your choices in ways you don't even notice. Keeping your finances private also protects your sense of dignity. There's a quiet strength in knowing your situation and managing it without broadcasting it. Whether you're thriving or tightening your belt, it's no one's right to dissect your spending habits or question your decisions. You owe no explanations for how you choose to handle your money. When you buy something nice for yourself, you don't need to justify it. When you choose to save instead of spend, you don't need to defend it. Privacy gives you that freedom to live on your terms without outside pressure. There's also a layer of safety in keeping financial matters private. In today's world, information travels fast, and not everyone who listens has good intentions. Oversharing about income, investments, or financial struggles can make you vulnerable. People might take advantage of your generosity or prey on your circumstances. The fewer details others know about your resources, the more control you keep over how you're approached, treated, and respected. Money can complicate even the best relationships. The moment people sense financial imbalance, power dynamics start to shift. Someone may feel inferior, while another may feel entitled. But when finances stay private, relationships stay more authentic. People connect with you, your character, your humor, your kindness, not with what they think your bank account represents. You maintain equality and sincerity in your relationships because no one is weighing your value against your wealth. Privacy with finances is also about inner peace. When you're not constantly comparing what you have or defending your financial choices, your focus returns to what really matters: security, independence, and contentment. You stop living to prove something. You start living to feel grounded. And that shift changes everything about how you handle money. You spend more intentionally, save with purpose, and plan for yourself, not for appearances. There's a difference between being private and being secretive. Secrecy hides out of fear. Privacy protects out of wisdom. As you get older, you learn that not everything needs to be explained or exposed. You realize that your financial privacy isn't about creating distance. It's about creating boundaries, healthy ones that give you peace, keep relationships genuine, and allow your money to serve its purpose, to support your life quietly, not define it publicly. Your relationship issues should always remain private because once you start letting others into that space, you give them power over how you feel and how you respond. Relationships are deeply personal, built on shared experiences, emotions, and unspoken understandings that only the two people inside it truly grasp. The moment those private details become public, even with good intentions, they get filtered through outside opinions. Friends, family, or even strangers begin to shape your perspective, and sometimes without realizing it, you start making choices based on what others think rather than what's best for your relationship. Every couple has disagreements, frustrations, and difficult moments. It's part of being human, part of learning how to love and communicate. But talking about those issues with everyone around you doesn't solve them. It just adds more voices to the noise. When you vent about your partner, people naturally take sides. They'll sympathize with you, validate your emotions, and in doing so, might unknowingly plant seeds of resentment. Later, when the argument is over and you've made peace, those same people will still hold on to the version of your partner that you painted in anger or pain. It becomes awkward, even tense, because the people closest to you now see your relationship through a distorted lens. Privacy in relationships isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about respecting the bond you share enough to protect it from unnecessary influence. The strength of any relationship depends on trust and safety, the ability to be vulnerable without fear of judgment or exposure. When you share every fight, every flaw, every doubt with others, you chip away at that foundation. The sacred space between you and your partner becomes crowded with outside opinions, assumptions, and advice that don't always fit your situation. Over time, it can erode the intimacy you've worked so hard to build. There's also a subtle dignity in keeping certain matters between you and the person you love. It shows maturity. It says, we can handle our business privately. It communicates respect, not just for your partner, but for yourself. Because when you expose your relationship struggles too easily, it often signals more about your need for validation than your need for resolution. And when validation becomes the goal, growth stops happening. Real progress in a relationship comes from honest conversations, not public discussions. Of course, there are times when you need to talk, when something feels too heavy to carry alone. That's when you choose wisely who you confide in. Maybe a therapist, maybe a trusted friend who won't judge or gossip, someone who helps you process, not persuade, because sharing for support is different from sharing for attention. One helps you heal, the other keeps you stuck in the same cycle of venting without change. When relationship issues stay private, you give your connection room to breathe. You allow mistakes to be forgiven without the world knowing. You let growth happen quietly. Every couple has moments they're not proud of, things said in frustration, things done out of emotion. When those moments are public, they become permanent in the eyes of others. But when they stay private, they can become lessons, not labels. You and your partner can learn, repair, and move forward without carrying the weight of outside judgment. Privacy also prevents emotional manipulation. Once people know your relationship details, some may use that information, intentionally or not, to influence how you act or feel. They might remind you of past arguments, criticize your decisions, or compare your situation to their own. Suddenly, your relationship stops being a partnership and starts feeling like a performance, one where you're constantly explaining, defending, or proving something. Keeping issues private keeps control where it belongs, with the two of you. It's easy to share when emotions run high. It feels like release. But the calm after the storm always arrives, and when it does, you'll wish you had kept more to yourself. Words spoken in frustration can't be taken back, and once shared, they live in people's minds. Keeping your relationship issues private allows love to mature in its natural rhythm, without spectators, without commentary, without unnecessary damage. Your family's private matters should always stay within the walls of your home, because once those details leave, you lose control over how they're told, twisted, or remembered. Family is personal, complex, and layered with years of history, love, mistakes, forgiveness, and growth. When you share too much about your family with others, you open that sacred space to interpretation, and people will always interpret through their own experiences, not yours. What feels like a harmless story or a moment of venting can easily become gossip in someone else's mouth. And once that happens, the version of your family that exists in the world is no longer yours to correct. Every family has moments they'd rather keep quiet, the arguments, the misunderstandings, the difficult seasons. Those moments don't define the family, but when shared publicly, they start to. People remember your family's struggles longer than they remember your family's love. They'll recall the tension, not the healing. That's why privacy matters. It protects the dignity of those you love, even when things aren't perfect. Because being loyal to your family doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means choosing to handle problems with grace without putting them on display for others to dissect. Keeping family matters private also shows maturity and respect. It acknowledges that everyone has their flaws, their struggles, and their seasons of weakness. When you share a family member's mistake or conflict, you're not just talking about them, you're representing them. And representation carries weight. Once something is spoken about publicly, it's nearly impossible to pull it back. Words spread, perceptions form, and people start treating your loved ones based on things they may not fully understand or that no longer apply. That can create lasting damage to relationships that could have otherwise healed quietly. It's easy to talk when emotions are running high. When a family member hurts you or disappoints you, the instinct is to seek validation by telling others your side. It feels like release, like you're gaining control by speaking your truth. But often what happens is the opposite. You lose control. You hand over your family's narrative to outsiders who might not have the empathy or the context to see the full picture. And when tempers cool and forgiveness comes, you're left trying to rebuild trust, not only within your family, but also between your family and everyone you involved in your pain. Privacy isn't about silence, it's about timing and boundaries. There's a time to talk, and it should be with people who have earned the right to hear those details, people who won't repeat them, judge them, or use them against you. That circle is small, and it should stay that way. When you confide in the wrong people, family issues stop being private moments of learning and start becoming public spectacles. And once people start discussing your family, it rarely ends with understanding. It usually ends with opinions. Keeping family matters private also gives space for growth. Every family needs room to make mistakes, to work through things, to change. When the world knows too much, that growth gets interrupted. Family members start feeling exposed, defensive, even ashamed. It becomes harder to communicate honestly because everyone's afraid of being talked about again. But when privacy is honored, people feel safe enough to open up, apologize, and rebuild without the pressure of outside judgment. That's when real healing happens, in quiet rooms, not public conversations. Protecting your family's privacy is also about legacy. The stories you tell today become the reputation your family carries tomorrow. You get to decide whether that legacy is built on dignity or disclosure. Every family has its struggles, but those struggles don't define your worth. They define your humanity. And when you keep them private, you protect the bond that connects generations. You protect the trust that holds families together, the unspoken promise that what happens inside the family stays protected, respected, and handled with love. Your next move or plans should always be kept private, because not everything you're working on needs to be seen or understood before it's ready. There's power in silence, especially when you're building something new. The moment you start talking too early about what you plan to do, you open the door for opinions, doubts, and distractions that can weaken your focus. People will start projecting their fears, their experiences, and their limitations onto your vision. And if you're not careful, their noise becomes louder than your own motivation. Privacy in planning isn't secrecy, it's strategy. It's knowing that some goals grow best in quiet soil before they ever see the light. When you talk too soon about your next step, you give away your energy. Every word you speak about what you're going to do releases a little bit of that internal drive that should be fueling the work. You start to feel a false sense of accomplishment just from saying it out loud. You get the validation before you've even earned the result, and that can dull your hunger. Keeping your plans private keeps your energy contained, focused, and ready for the moment when it truly counts: execution. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember what you said you were going to do, they remember what you actually did. There's also a layer of protection that comes with privacy. Not everyone wants to see you win, and not everyone claps when you succeed. Some people will subtly discourage you, not out of malice, but out of fear that your growth will highlight their stagnation. Others may try to copy your ideas, question your choices, or insert doubt into your confidence. The less people know, the less room they have to interfere. You control the narrative when you keep it to yourself. You set your own pace without anyone rushing you or watching too closely for signs of progress or failure. Keeping your next move private also allows flexibility. Plans change, opportunities shift. Sometimes the thing you thought you wanted leads you to something even better. When your goals are public, you feel pressure to stay consistent with what you announced, even if it no longer fits who you are or what you need. But when your plans are private, you're free to adjust without having to explain yourself. You can evolve in peace. You can change direction quietly. And that kind of freedom is invaluable, especially when you're navigating personal or professional transitions. Silence also keeps your confidence intact. When you speak too early, you open yourself up to questions you might not be ready to answer. People will ask how it's going, what your timeline is, what obstacles you're facing, and even when they mean well, those questions can make you second-guess yourself. Privacy gives you space to figure things out at your own pace, to make mistakes privately, and to refine your ideas before anyone has a chance to judge them. Growth isn't always pretty. It's messy, uncertain, and sometimes slow. And when you're in that stage, you don't need an audience. You need focus. There's also something deeply satisfying about letting results speak for themselves. When you stay quiet about your next move and then show up with something solid, something complete, it commands respect. People see the outcome, not the process, and that silence turns into strength. The element of surprise works in your favor. You show that your word carries weight because you don't talk about what you might do. You do it. That kind of consistency builds credibility and self-trust. Keeping your plans private isn't about being distant or guarded. It's about being deliberate. You learn to value the process more than the perception. You stop seeking reassurance and start trusting your own vision. In a world where everyone feels pressured to share every step, choosing privacy becomes a quiet form of confidence. It says you believe in what you're building enough to let it grow without applause, without permission, and without the need to prove it before it's real. Your emotional battles are one of the most personal parts of your life, and they deserve to be handled with care and privacy. Not every emotion you feel needs to be shared, and not everyone who listens is equipped to understand. Emotions are powerful. They shape how you see the world, how you respond, and how you heal. But when you expose every internal struggle to the outside world, you give people the opportunity to define your story for you. Privacy with your emotions isn't about pretending to be strong. It's about protecting the sacred process of understanding yourself without outside noise. Everyone faces emotional battles: grief, loneliness, regret, insecurity, disappointment, but how you move through them is uniquely yours. When you start sharing every detail of your emotional pain, especially in moments of vulnerability, you risk turning something deeply personal into something performative. The world has become quick to react but slow to care. People will sympathize for a moment, but very few will truly hold space for your emotions the way you need them to. And when you make your healing public, you can end up performing your recovery rather than living it. You start healing for the eyes watching you instead of for the heart within you. There's strength in privacy. It allows you to process your emotions fully, to sit with them, to understand them before speaking them into existence. When emotions are raw, they're easily misunderstood. What feels like truth in the heat of pain might shift once clarity returns. Keeping your emotional battles private gives you time to find that clarity. It's giving yourself grace to feel, to think, and to grow without needing to justify your process to anyone else. Because once you start explaining your pain, you often start editing it too, trying to make it palatable, acceptable,